resurrection of Christ. Now, typically, we would meet our interactive persons and they would ask this question. If you can stop one of the main arguments against Christ, or one way to kill Christianity, you can disprove the resurrection, right? So I think arguments to support that Christ died and resurrected from the dead is one of the most powerful arguments we could use to help the defense of our faith. So there actually have persons who are out there in the body of philosophers who actually went and did studies and got released in how arguments that could support the resurrection of Christ. It's a historical fact, and because historians of different types of belief systems actually agree that Jesus Christ died and resurrected. And that's a big thing. But if you were to ask on a road or someone to ask, how do you know this? What evidence could you provide from the other than the Bible system? Right? Something that I can actually look up for myself. Okay, so we're doing the voting first, all right. So, all right. Go ahead, Sarah. Then we go to the afterwards.
Okay, good afternoon again, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So what we're gonna do is just to ask the nominees. I'm hoping, are you hearing any echo over your side?
No, I'm not hearing an echo now, but I was hearing it.
Right, so we have a nominee online, Nathan. We wanted each of the nominees to basically introduce themselves, want to know a bit more about you so that we can know who we're voting for. We have about 5 positions. I'm going to just bring up the constitution of the club so that I can also write on the board and maybe put in the chat as well. But we'll maybe start online with Nathan since I know he has something else to do. So basically you can tell something about yourself and basically why would you say you are a Christian? Why do you believe the Bible? And if you have any vision for the club, it's something simple, right? So if you can't really get everything, we just want to know a statement of your belief and any ideas that you have or why you think we should vote for you. All right, so Nathan, are you ready or you want us to start in here?
I'm ready, I'm ready.
It'd be really lovely if we could see your face too, please.
Well, I can't really turn on the camera now though. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nathan Chambers. Are you guys hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, all right. My name is Nathan Chambers. I'm a first-year student at the Faculty of Science and Technology. I'm a Christian, yeah. We baptized when I was 7 years old. I have a passion for Christ. I have a passion for apologetics. I love these topics that we do on a weekly basis, you know, proving God, proving the resurrection. Is God a moral monster, as what some people may seem to think? And I like to convert people. Like, I like to change people's opinions and things by giving them things that they wouldn't think about in the first place. So yeah, I have a passion for apologetics. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
Okay, Nathan, thank you so much. Oh, I didn't hear if you had said that you can't see. Obviously, it looks like you're not able to show your face. You're not able to do that now.
No, not right now, unfortunately.
No pressure if it's not possible. Just asking.
Yeah, not right now, unfortunately.
All right, seems not. Okay, so thank you, Nathan. I'm still trying to open up the Constitution so I can actually announce the positions that are available. And well, obviously, president and vice president are one, PRO is one, we have a secretary and a treasurer. Those are the general ones, but I just want to make sure I'm not missing out anything else. Recording in progress. Right. So I do hear your passion, Nathan, and one thing I can actually say about Nathan is I remember he had joined us also for the UWI Pro-Life Club and was basically, I could see his passion about apologetics and living out the Christian life. So gonna be hearing other people. So president, vice president, Secretary, we have activities coordinator, treasurer. Yeah, I think those are the ones. So I'm gonna write these on the board. I think I'm gonna be sharing it on the screen as well. You could introduce yourself as well and what you want to do.
So I can speak from here.
Yeah.
Hi, good day everyone. My name is Stephen Chan, second year engineering student. I have been a Christian for, you can say, probably my entire life. However, I was saved at the age of 13 years old. In terms of what I would like to see done or improve in this stuff will be more, evangelism and reaching out to students. So whereas in this young club, whereby the members will learn about Christ or learn about how to defend people, was to extend it to the wider community campus in order to actually meet with other students on a personal level and just coach them and share with them, try to share with them that our faith and we believe is not something that is alive, but Jesus, God is real, God is real, and He is able to help us and strengthen us in life. Right? So that's basically what I would like to see from this stuff, whereby we make be more bold and confident of what we do.
Alright, so the one I can also vote. We have to vote for everyone that is nominated, just picking favorites or anything, so as Steve, where is everything? Okay. Okay, all right. So Javon, you're ready to give your case, who you are, when.
Good afternoon, my name is Javon Terrell. Yeah. I'm a third year student doing computer science here at the UWI once. Christian since 2014. I am passionate about the fact that God is God and He's such a merciful God. And as that nice chorus says, everybody has to know who Jesus is. So I do believe in that, and I really enjoyed singing that song back in high school. That's when I actually learned that song in high school. Everybody has to know who Jesus is. And it's true, everybody has to know who Jesus is, but at the same time, that's where this club comes in, actually, in the sense of us being Christian apologetics and defending the truth of who Jesus is because of our knowledge through the grace of Jesus about Him, and inviting others to enjoy the knowledge of God, enjoy the presence of God, and enjoy the fact that as He is the rock that we stand upon, He's the solid foundation that we have in life. He's the one that actually, the only one that would be able to do it, as John looked and saw and felt sad, wondering who was able to actually open the scrolls, right? Things like that. We as Christians have a joy and a peace to know that God loves us so much that He would send us His Son, and His Son loves us so much that He would come because he could have chosen not to do it. So I have a passion for the fact that we stand upon his word and use his word to find even proof outside of his word and proof within his word as well, to show that he is the truth and he's the light that we will all go to. And he's the one that loves us all to even come in our form that he had made to die for us. So I love this club, really and truly. I love how what this club is aspiring to do. And I'd love to be a part of something like this. And it really is a great opportunity to be a part of something like this where we were just standing saying, hey, Jesus is the truth, and like soldiers, because Jesus doing what he did was not only from the position of a king, but also the position of a true leader of a huge platoon of soldiers. Because as he says that we are putting on the armor of God to fight against whatever fire darts the enemy might throw, it is truly an honor to be a part of such an army that is actually going to win. So aside from standing in the defensive against whatever lies and untruths may be spread about what Jesus is doing for us, Jesus has been doing and will continue to be doing, is awesome. So I really enjoy being a part of something like this, and yeah.
Right, lovely. That question as well from you. So our fourth nominee is the Marcel Denny. The Denny, who has been a wonderful leader thus far.
Not about the deep part, but good afternoon, everyone. I would have been with you guys for the whole process. But if you've not mentioned me before, my name is Marcel Denny. I'm currently a student within the departments of chemistry. I actually found the passion for this because I recognized after speaking with numerous of people from various walks of life that we don't really, as Christians, know why we believe what we believe and pressed upon it. And when asked certain questions, especially in an academic sphere such as this, we don't know how to come back, and all we have to say as a rebuttal is that the Bible said. And to really win more souls for Christ, that to me was not a sound response for those who don't recognize the Bible's authority. That always found it pertinent or a very unique way of pointing them to the cross without saying the Bible said. And once they're seeing the cross and they recognize the Bible's authority, then it will be better give them a point or give them an access to God. Even just moving them from an atheist to an agnostic is a big transition in my opinion, and from an agnostic to a theist, and then from a theist to a Christian. These are transitions that the people may undergo with various arguments. And we as Christians need to rise up to the plate because the atheists have become more vicious or more verbal with their primal arguments and disposition against the Christian faith and religion in general. And I don't feel as if us as the Christian community is really standing up to those claims and arguments that they've been making against us. So that's why I decided to do this apologetics thing. I've been interested in for many years. I was doing something like this on a smaller scale within my department, but then with the opportunity presenting itself, I jumped on it to a more campus-wide scale. It's been my pleasure to serve you guys for this academic year, and hopefully I can serve again the next one in maybe in a very different capacity.
Alright, Marcel, thank you so much. It's normal protocol for those nominees to leave. What's what we decided to do?
I know what position I'm going for, so I'd be a part of the voting process.
Okay. Well, in general elections, there is that's the people we have, and so you notice we have 5 positions and 4 persons. No one else wants to come. Maybe and not me. I would then the first vulnerable. You still have opportunity to start to check on to anybody else wants to be a nominee.
Do you want a nominee?
No, 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 it's rather- All right, I don't want to.
That's okay, you can learn.
That's fine. Okay, all right, so let's get the voting process done because we do have a little time and we want to cover content, so. First position is president and. Stephen Reed.
Say again, please, what you're saying for your feet? Yeah, I'm just not speaking to you.
Okay. So, president, we are going to raise a time. Okay, right, so. Of the four who live in our village. So. We vote on Marcel, we vote on Stephen, and all that in each. So president is Marcel is first.
Martha declines. Martha declines. Wants to amend this case.
Stephen, the one person who was Stephen, who was Gemma, who was Nathan. What do you prefer?
Please, you're.
Was someone in the chat has said something?
You're not hearing.
Oh, you're not hearing me? All right.
So you're voting for president, right, or the change the balance of the participation. Stephen John, get on to her.
Yes, and you need to echo it there, so they can also vote online.
You can also vote online, you want to be president.
So Marcel was who, so whichever four of the name you have. Just type it in the chat, the president and then the name, the person. So let's have to vote there.
Okay, I think it's good to have the future to be more presidents of our conversation. What do you think?
What is the name said of that? And maybe that-
Is anybody want to vote? I'm gonna see. Which happens to say. I am on the chat. This is sounds blurry.
So where's the VP? We're gonna move. Goes ahead. Number please, Marcel, please, Mr. Molly. Marcel.
No, are you hearing me now? All right, I don't think they're hearing from your laptop. To decline. There, the other options are vice president, secretary, treasurer, and some other things. No, you can't do it twice. I'm voting sir right there. Steven. Or even Javon. Why not Javon Tyrell for presidents? Yeah, so
Hello, everyone. Sorry. Hello.
Yes, you hear me
Yes.
because I'm talking, I don't hear
We
you.
are not hearing online, so you are losing the people. They're gone down to 4 because we are not hearing. Hello.
All right, we have adjusted where we are at.
Um,
So
Dr.
hopefully you're
Buckland.
able to hear us better.
Dr. Buckland. Hello.
Yes.
We
Yes.
are not hearing on this side.
Are
and
you
because of
hearing
that-
me now?
Yes, but because of that, people are coming offline. 2 persons have come off the line because we are not hearing.
Okay, we're sorry about that, but we're doing the best that we can. All right, so Stephen.
We're hearing a little better now.
Good. Are you, anybody voting for Stephen for VP? All right, you can vote for yourself if you want to be VP. All right, so I see one more for Stephen. Anybody voting for Javon also for VP? Javon voting for Javon, you also. Nathan, who is voting for Nathan for VP? Nathan, will you vote for yourself?
Yes, I will
We
vote
have-
for myself.
Okay. You did the- Marcel. Anyway, Nathan, you didn't vote for president for anyone. Would you vote for yourself as well for president, although you did pass some votes? Would you vote for yourself for president, or would you vote for someone else?
I will vote for Marcel as president.
Okay. Secretary. Marcel Denny, Stephen John, Javon Nathan. Marcel, the secretary.
No, you can't.
We're gonna be. Anyway,
We need, I think we need more PR.
it's gonna be, we're just going systematically, right? The secretary, so Marcel, any votes for secretary? Stephen John, any votes for secretary?
So she needs to say second one. Okay, it's fine.
We're gonna do a voting on this, all right?
Go somebody contesting here. I'm not contesting.
What's your name, my finger? D? Yeah, D. M. Dalmika. Secretary, so 1 vote, you're voting for yourself.
All agree.
3. Are you using the privilege? All right, so far, I said 3. No problem, there'll be a secretary for the two. All right, so let's start.
Yes, it's secretary.
And you all agree, or that's okay, or does it really matter? Oh, okay. So now the PR and activity coordinator. Since we already put her in a position, we already put Marcel in a position. Stephen, Javon, Nathan, who would be activities coordinator? All right, Stephen, how many want Stephen? 1, 4. Activities and treasurer and PR. And public relations. 2. No, we need someone who is.
Yes.
All right, so 1, 2, 3.
You're.
Anyone online?
Okay.
All right, so it seems that our president is Marcel. Our VP is Vermont. Our secretary is Delmika, and our PR and activities and treasurer, you have the big bulk of work. Stephen. We'd like to congratulate our incoming We had 5 positions and now we had 5 nominees. So we actually can't. Shortcuts. So much for, putting out yourselves for this, and we really are excited to work with you and hear your ideas, so hopefully those on Zoom land can actually hear. We're just gonna go right into the content because we only have half of that. So let me just note down this, and thanks again, Nathan. I know you might have to leave, but congrats as well to you. Thanks for saying congratulations. Congrats. So we'll meet soon and on this news. So you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All the best.
Thanks, bro.
All
Your
right.
money.
God bless.
Okay, without further ado, we will begin. All right, so this person actually got their PhD in examining arguments for the resurrection of Christ. I can provide the YouTube link to the actual video, and there's other arguments that he has actually made. All right, just go further in depth, but he has summarized the 3 main arguments for the resurrection of Christ. So I hope you find it very informative.
Here's to me the top 3 single best arguments for the resurrection. Number 1, Paul's 2 trips to Jerusalem, a maximum of 6 years after the cross. You go, what? Are we still talking about the resurrection? Are Paul going to Jerusalem? Both. Paul goes to Jerusalem 3 years after his. All right, let's back up. If you put the cross in 30 AD, if you put Paul's conversion in 32 to 33, these are normal years whether you're believers or unbelieving scholars. Okay? Cross 33 is 30. Some take 33, but let's go with, it's a nice round number. Let's go with cross 30, Paul's conversion 32 to 33, and 3 years later he goes to Jerusalem by his own numbering. He tells us this in one of the accepted Pauline epistles by every atheist scholar who writes, which means he was in Jerusalem at, I said 6 years later, either 35 or 36 AD. Why is that important? And how does it relate to resurrection? In Galatians chapter 1, verse 18, he says, after I was converted and after I spent 3 years in the desert, and we find out he's been doing some preaching too, he said, I went up to Jerusalem and spent 15 days with Peter and James, the brother of Jesus. And he uses a Greek word describing his visit. The Greek word is hysteresis. The root word is histor. The root word is spelled H-I-S-T-O-R. It's the Greek word from which we get the English word history. Now, it would be one of Don Carson's exegetical fallacies to say that since this word is the root word for our word history, it must be in history. It doesn't work like that. However, if you check Kittle's huge 10-volume with dozens of pages on this word in this Greek study, it'll tell you that the word that word has been used as far back as Herodotus, the father of history, so-called, the Greek historian. A little bit of change on the dates, but at least 6 centuries before Jesus, 5 or 6 minimum. And he used this word over and over and over to refer to history writing, and so have a number of other Greek scholars. Doesn't have to mean history, but it seems to mean something like that. So, Paul goes to Jerusalem, he meets with Peter and James, and he's talking/dialoguing. The Greek word hysteresis, by the way, means to investigate or to question. And what's his topic? Well, we'll answer that in just a second. But remember what the whole theme of the book of Galatians is. Here's the theme of Galatians in one sentence. It's all about the gospel. If there's too much, it's heresy. If there's too little, it's heresy. Get it right. That's it. That's the book. What do you think they were talking about, and why would Paul put this in Galatians? They obviously were talking about the gospel, and we'll show you in a minute that they were. All right, so he's there just those years later. Now, a lot of critics do not think eyewitnesses wrote any of the four gospels. We can make arguments, and we need to make arguments for that. But they don't think that eyewitnesses wrote it. But Bart Ehrman says, Paul spent 15 days with Peter and James, and he said, if you're Paul, Peter and James are two good guys to know. Then he said, I wished I knew them. And then he says a little bit later, where do we get closer to eyewitness testimony than this first meeting in Jerusalem? All right, then Paul comes back again in Galatians 2, first 10 verses. And here he tells you, chapter 2, verse 2, I came to them again, Peter and James, to set before them the gospel I was preaching, to see if I was running or had run in vain. But what? Yeah, I put the gospel before them because, man, I don't want to be preaching the wrong thing or not put a different accent on it. I want to make sure we had it right. Think it only took you 5 or 6 years? And you know what I think he'd say to me? I think he'd say, you know, you don't follow arguments real well, do you? He said, I got the argument from Jesus Christ, +2. I got the argument 3 years later from these same guys. This is my third attempt at getting this thing right. I'm doing what, remember he's a Pharisee. I do what any good researcher does. I'm checking out and reviewing my sources periodically to make sure we're in the same path. Whoa, makes it look like a whole different person. He knows how to do research, he's a Pharisee, and it says in verse 2, I asked them about the gospel. He's already said in 1 Corinthians 15 and elsewhere, the gospel has to include at least these 3 points. There's others that make it in once they're on the list, but these are the only ones that are there in the core. The deity and death and resurrection of Jesus. Some Christians say death, burial, and resurrection. Okay, burial's kind of common, but only makes it about half the time. Deity, death, resurrection. What do you think they're talking about? They're talking about the gospel. Well, what did Peter and James say? Don't keep us waiting. He says right after that, 5 words in English. They added nothing to me. They added nothing to me. Then he makes another point of revelation. Oh, by the way, John the disciple was there, he says. This is like Grimm's fairy tale or something. I mean, these are the 4 most influential Christians in the ancient world. Paul, Peter, James the brother of Jesus, and John. No one's more influential. They're all there together. They're talking about the gospel, and they added nothing to me. Then just a few verses later, verse 9, he said, they gave Barnabas and me the right hand of fellowship and sent us to the Gentiles, and they were going to stay in Jerusalem and witness to the Jews. If you're blessing somebody and sending them out, that's another indication of agreement. So I think this is probably the strongest argument because, as Bart Ehrman says, it's the closest we get, even on the skeptical view, to eyewitness. Paul gets it from the 4 big scholars, all of them eyewitnesses, and they all say, you got it. This is just huge. And this is why critics can't put down the early creeds, which I'll get to next. Number 2 is the emergence of early creeds, the knowledge of the early creeds in the early church. This started in the late 1800s in Germany, and it kind of evolved a little bit, but it really came to light in Germany and in England. In Germany, the first person to write about it was Oscar Kuhlmann, Earliest Christian Confessions, and he did it in the 40s and was published in French, throughout the 40s. It was published in French, German, and English. And then C.H. Dodd, professor of New Testament at Cambridge, did a little book called The Apostolic Preaching and Its Developments. And he does mostly the Acts sermon summaries, which are another species of creeds. What's so powerful about these creeds? Everybody dates the vast majority and all the important ones before the earliest New Testament books were ever written. Now, 1 Thessalonians is often dated 48 to 50, which I'd say from what I've read, 50 AD is probably the most popular date for 1 Thessalonians. That means these creeds have to date from 30 to 50 AD. Even critics place the earliest ones 30 to 40 AD, and some critics, like the Jesus Seminar, how many know what the Jesus Seminar is? All right, pretty conservative, right? They reject, last time I heard you get different numbers for different questions, they reject 80 to 90% of the red letter words of Jesus in the New Testament. They voted on 1 Corinthians 15, 3 to 7. When did this creed come about? The majority of Jesus Seminar scholars said it was pre-Pauline. Okay, what does pre-Pauline mean? I mean, it can be all the way up to 1 Thessalonians. And they specify it was in existence before Paul left for Damascus. Whoa. This thing was in existence between 1 to 5? Can we do any better? When Jesus died. Now, creeds are one thing when they're in epistles that are 10, 20 years old, still younger than the Gospels. But the fact that we have creeds from the 30s and from the first half of the 30s, and a number of them were in existence before Paul left on his trip to Damascus, how early are these things? Here's Bart Ehrman again. He says Paul could have gotten all of the creeds he mentions in his epistles. These are, you have to put different quotes together. He could have gotten all of them in Jerusalem from Peter, James, and John in the first 2 years. They could have been around since the first 2 years after the cross. Now, it's extremely strong evidence. I often go with this one for number one, but I like the other one because we have the four major eyewitnesses confirming the resurrection report. But one thing that's really good about these creeds, here's a skeptical critique. Sometimes a good friend used to call this technique with PhD students. He used to call it rolling a grenade into the room. And what he would do as a professor is take a critical position, argue against all the PhD students, and tell them they're all crazy, and he could explain away the resurrection, or whatever they're doing. And he makes them come at him. And he says, it hones these folks really, really fast to have to answer on their own 2 feet. Okay, here's a quick comeback from a skeptic. You'll trap most Christians by using this critique. Now, the creeds might be early, but they're nothing, they're hearsay. All they are is hearsay. This is what a bunch of Christians believe at that time. Who cares what Christians believe? So, of course, some people believe in the resurrection. I'm going to say, what didn't you hear about my previous point? That Paul was in Jerusalem talking to the other 3 eyewitnesses. They affirmed the gospel. Some of these things were there before Paul was converted. They affirmed them. Now that gives the push, that gives the probability to these little creeds going around and being written about in the epistles. And we literally, here's an example Garrett Luda made before he died. He said, the preaching of the resurrection began immediately after the cross. In the New Testament, this is called homologia. It's a New Testament word. And it predates the creeds. I could have made a separate point on this one. I probably should have. Before the creeds were the teachings that the creeds encapsulated. And the teachings were the gospel teachings. Ready for this one? 80% of the creeds concern the gospel data. Guess what the early church was interested in? Deity, death, resurrection. Next creed, death and resurrection. Next one, deity, resurrection. Next one, deity, death, resurrection. They're all like that. And they're all Christological, as Kuhlman says. I don't think that's strictly true, but he says that. They're all Christological. So extremely early, backed up by point number one. These are the most revolutionary thing to come on the scene. In fact, when I first did this in our PhD program, we got 100, well, we had 100 already graduate, we've got 100 really sharp PhD students, and I did a whole course on the creeds. And here's the response of my PhD students, who are sharp people, probably halfway through the program, and they're going, where did this argument come from? I said, well, it's been around since the two books I mentioned, 30s and 40s, and there's a third one that came out in the 60s by a student of Bruce Metzger at Princeton. And these are the best books on the subject. Why haven't we heard about them? Because nobody's picking up the data and running with it. So there's something for you to do. Some of you looking for master's theses or PhD topics, talk about the creeds. And they packed the course out, and a bunch of people wanted to get in, they couldn't get in. We filled it up. They said, can you do it again next year? I thought, I'll never teach the same subject 2 times in a row. We'll do it, because too many of us want to take this. We've not heard this. I did it again, it filled up again. What I'm saying is it's exciting, combined with the fact that they're going, where was this all my life? And the sooner you learn it, the better it'll be for all of us. Me too. Best evidence number 3, historical criteria. Now, this lags back the first 2. I would take Paul's trip to Jerusalem and the creeds, far and away the best 2. But here's historical criteria. These are rules that are under assault from some critical scholars today, but nobody dogs all of them. And these are rules that historians, New Testament scholars, and others use, and you've heard them. They're like this: early, eyewitness, multiple attestation, enemy attestation, embarrassment, coherence, Aramaic substrata. Those are all criteria. And when you find those in the creeds that are affirmed by Paul, you are really bringing the pillars to put this argument together, and we haven't left the 30s AD. That's how strong the earliest data are. Which of the appearances is the best attested? Easily, the appearance to the 12. The appearance, notice it's a group, which really helps with people who take psychological theories. But easily, the best appearance is the appearance to the 12. By the way, I gave you a quote on Bart. I have to give you a quote on Dale Allison, what he said about the trip to Jerusalem. Dale said, he said, Paul went to Jerusalem and talked to these guys and stayed with Peter in the first trip for 15 days. He said, the resurrection is the center of his message. There's just no possible way it can't come up in 15 days. That's Dale Allison, a skeptic. And by the way, Dale starts his first book on the resurrection, and his sentence, I'm paraphrasing, but it's very close to this. He's got a sentence that says, I have no doubt that after his death by crucifixion, Jesus appeared to his disciples. Okay, his second book just came out. My research assistant and I are reviewing it for the Irish Theological Journal, quarterly, ITQ. And Dale starts out his book this way on page 1. He said, I'm going to tell you my view right up front. A lot of people, he's a favorite of some of the Jesus mythers. They just like how critical he is. Here's what he says on page 1. I believe that Jesus appeared to that the disciples saw Jesus and that Jesus saw the disciples. That's on page 1. I mean, some things are changing. All right. I raise question marks when I don't want to make an absolute statement that I can't give you chapter and verse for in the research. So I got a question mark here. It's very possible that a view that has literal appearances of some sort is the hottest theory going today. Well, here's another way to say it. It seems like more scholars believe something happened to Jesus after his death than those who believe that nothing happened to Jesus after his death. Now, when I say that, there are a lot of different opinions. There was an old view in the late 19th century that was very popular, and it popped up again 3/4 of the way through the last century, and it goes like this. Jesus was really raised from the dead, truly, but he was not raised in a body. He was raised spiritually, like what Acts seems to say happened to Paul on the way to Damascus in Acts 9, 22, 26. So, and they are resurrection proponents, but they don't believe in bodily resurrection. You say, how can you do that? Well, let me give you an example. I know Christians in the churches I've been a member of. A number of Christians think that Paul saw that kind of Jesus from the descriptions in Acts. I think they're wrong, but they think he saw that version of Jesus on the way to Damascus, and they just add the step that that's maybe the way all the appearances were, which is kind of a liberal move in the data, but they don't read that stuff and they don't know. But what I'm saying is I know a number of evangelical Christians who take that view based on Acts 9, 22, 26. You can debate that. But all I'm saying is not all appearance views are the same. There are different varieties. Okay, let me talk a little bit about the minimal facts. I did my dissertation on the resurrection back before like 92.3% of you were born, 1976, see? And so I've been working on the resurrection for a long time. This magnum opus started when I started to update my bibliography in the late 1990s. I updated my bibliography from 76 on until about 2013. So I updated my bibliography for, almost 15 years. And then I started writing. The writing of the first volume, I'm done with almost all of the magnum opus, but it has to be edited and they're bringing it out one volume at a time. The entire magnum opus is 5,500 pages long. It's being divided into 4 volumes of approximately, rounded off, approximately 950 or 1,000 pages per volume. They gave me the figures, and if you know what Kittle looks like, Kittle's Greek New Testament, the 4 volumes are about the size of 4 volumes of Kittle. That's about how big they are. There's a lot of data here. The first volume is on the evidence. How much evidence do we have for the resurrection? And it's about 1,300 pages long. Now, what did I find? I have 6 minimal facts, which I think if a critic grants those, and virtually every critic will grant the facts, but not our interpretation of the facts, i.e. Jesus was raised. But they will grant the facts. The earliest disciples believed they saw the risen Jesus. You see, take those 6, and I spent 600 pages on those 6 facts and a few odd ones that are a little outside the margins there. 600 pages. Guess how many evidences per fact? Average. About 20 major and minor arguments per fact. Now do you know why almost nobody's arguing with them? Now let me say it again. They will grant that something like that happened, but they don't grant the interpretation. Of course, Bart Ehrman, I say all the time, Bart Ehrman's an atheist. Ludeman died an atheist. I don't know where Spong was, but he must not have been a whole lot further away. They died atheists. And so obviously I'm not saying they believed in the resurrection, but they believed in those facts. Some of the other facts are Jesus died by crucifixion, number 1. The disciples thought they saw the risen Jesus, number 2. The preaching started very, very early. Ludeman said right away, he said immediately is his word. 4, their lives were transformed as a result, being willing to die. Now, I agree with Sean McDowell and others who have written, you can't prove many of the disciples died for their faith. We don't have early enough data. But interestingly enough, we have 3 reports of 3 early disciples who died in the first century, and they're the most influential ones. We have first century reports for Paul, Peter, and James, the brother of Jesus. Now, a lot of Christians think they couldn't kill John, so they exiled him. We have a second century report of John's martyrdom. Now, Sean doesn't think it's very good, so he says, yeah, it's not a good one for John. But at least we have 3 good first century sources that, those 3, Paul, James, and Peter all died for their faith. And the thing that's said about them is basically true. Paul by beheading, Peter by being crucified upside down, and James by being stoned to death. Josephus gives us the date on that. But back to the point here, about 20 different arguments for each minimal fact. And I don't count, in case you're thinking this, well, if you've got 20 creeds, that's 20 right there. No, if I have 20 creeds, that counts as one argument. And now I got to work harder to get the other 20. All right, let me move on. A lot of arguments here for the minimal facts. Okay, in spite of what I just said about some Christians like the disembodied experiences and some non-Christians like the fact that Jesus actually appeared but not bodily based on Acts 9:22-26, bodily appearances have come back today in the literature. I have a lecture to give tomorrow, one of my breakouts, on how did Jesus appear. I'll give a lot more data on this, but today it's probably, I would have put a question mark here if that's the way I was wording it. Today, it may be the majority view that the appearances were bodily. Now again, the critics who are saying this are not saying there were bodily appearances. They're saying the disciples believed they saw Jesus bodily. Of course, I don't believe it, but they are clear about that. That's what the critics are saying. Mike Licona is so sure about this one being the majority view, he's made a suggestion about almost 10 years ago now, in the Southeastern Seminary Journal that Bob introduced the articles. Mike proposed that we add 3 more facts to the minimal facts list. And one of them is that the appearances are bodily. Another one is that Jesus predicted his resurrection ahead of time. Which, by the way, is very important philosophically, because if Jesus knew he was going to die and rise, that's a worldview concern, and that means Jesus had some control over his worldview. He was a player in his worldview. So Jesus knew about a lot of this stuff ahead of time. It'd be very important if he predicted the resurrection. But bodily appearances, I don't have predictions here in this list, but they could be. But Mike thinks bodily appearances need to be there. That from the core facts, from the minimal facts alone, there's plenty of evidence that they were bodily. If you folks are interested in verses that fit their creeds, but they're taught bodily appearances, here's a few for you. 2 sermon summaries in Acts, which are species of the creeds. Acts chapter 2, Acts chapter 13. Acts chapter 2 is Petrine, Acts chapter 13 is Pauline. And they clearly teach bodily resurrection. In fact, Acts 13 is probably the closest we get to Paul saying there was an empty tomb. But not entirely, because another key reference, I'll get to Paul in a second. Another one is maybe the only creed that's found in the Gospels. Luke 24:34. Even Rudolf Bultmann, to the left of Bart Ehrman, Rudolf Bultmann said Luke 24:34 was a creed. And that's put in a gospel bodily context. It appeared to Peter. Here's another one. I already said Luke 24, Acts 2, Acts 13. Here's the one that most people make this argument from. 1 Corinthians 15, 3-5, the earliest, at least the most important creed. And there, Paul, it's not Paul, Paul's reporting a creed. This is one of the ones they say the Jesus Seminar said predated Paul's conversion. Let me remind you the words there. Jesus died for our sins according to the scriptures, was buried, rose again, he rose and appeared, and it has the triple hati clause, and, which Pinchas Lapid, an Orthodox Jewish New Testament scholar, says that's a Jewish method of narration. That's how they narrate. And when you put the narration together, what you get is, you look and tell me, what do you get when you get died, buried, rose, and appeared? What do you get when you put all 4 together? You get what went down is what came out. Now, it's changed, but that's a body. And the latest book to come out on this is an incredible work published in Germany and English by John Cook, an American New Testament scholar. He's got 500 pages on this part alone. And here's how he starts page 1 of his book on the crucifixion and empty tomb. Then he has a separate one on the resurrection. Here's what he says. He says, this whole series, 2 huge books, are dedicated to 2 themes. He says, here's my 2 themes. And here's his first one. Paul's language is every bit as much bodily as are the Gospels. He says, according to the Greek, he's a linguist, a New Testament scholar, and the languages he knows, it's unbelievable to read his stuff. But he says that if you get died, buried, rose, appeared, what went down came out, and Paul's view of the body of Jesus is no difference, no substantial difference between Paul's view and the Gospel's view. So that's about what? I just gave you 6 arguments from the minimal facts alone that the appearances were most likely bodily, and it may be the chief view today. By the way, Bill Craig is another one. Bill Craig makes an even more incredible statement than Cook. Bill Craig says, I think Paul's resurrection teachings are probably more bodily than the Gospels. Like, wow, that's amazing that you're going to say that. All right, moving on. The bodily appearance view arose very early. Why did it? Very simple. It's in the creeds, and the creeds are start from 30 to 35 and 35 to 40. So if they're in the creeds, and I just gave you several examples, Luke 24, Acts 2, Acts 13. Oh, I left one out. Romans 8:11 is a great creed. He'll change our mortal bodies to be like unto his new body. But it's body and body. Sort of like Philippians 3:20 and 21, which isn't a creed, but it's similar teaching. In other words, Paul could easily have said this. He will change your mortal soma to be like unto his glorious pneuma. Wouldn't that be easy? If that's what the view was? He'll change your body to be like his spirit. Not what it says.
So you guys want to hear the rest of it? Yeah? All right, so 15 more minutes. So we'll put a link in the description. I'll send you. All right. But I just want to point to these arguments. He's not as fair as I'd like to be, but he was the most constant. Because others are like 2 hours long, 3 hours long, discussion back and forth. There's even ones with debates with atheists on this back and forth. So this was the most concise one. There's a comment in the chats. Okay. Sonia Faye Beckons Buckland said, sorry, Jesus made it clear that he was not a spirit. He asked for something to eat. He even asked Thomas to put his hand in his side. This was when Thomas was expressing disbelief. Yes, that is true. So there are a lot of evidence. One of the historical arguments was one of to talk about the fact that they had records of Saul, in historical evidence of Saul turning to Paul. You know, because there are records of him in Jewish history about how he was persecuting the Christians and stuff like that. That's one of the main parts. I mean, there was some arguments from Josephus. I don't remember right now, but he was mentioning on the verge. But again, this is just again a quick summary. There's volumes of this. Like I said, people do their PhDs on stuff. So, yeah, the movie that we watched a couple of weeks back actually spoke on this. So, again, this is not everything, but 15 minutes left. But I know Dr. Buckland has to go, so I'm allowed to leave. I'm not running you.
That's fine. I just do parting words. Thanking everyone for your support over the year. This is birth of something very important for campus, and we just ask for your prayers and continued support. If you have any persons at your church, any peers who are coming to UWE You can spread the word since we're having our hybrid meetings. And just continue to pray for us. And for those doing exams, we wish you all the very best in your exams. And we're not actually we're gonna continue the loop. We're gonna keep everyone in the loop because we still will have activities as a ministry. This is really just an offshoot of part of our ongoing training, especially of youths and other persons, all age groups, in improving our abilities to just meet persons where they are at and see how we can bring them closer to God and answer what questions they have. So thanks again and God bless you all. I think I'll stop recording and stop the live stream. We thank our very brave and consistent and dedicated leader, Marcia, alone in the classroom and still shows up each week, and he has his own studies. So I definitely appreciate that. And or you have expressed your, also your ideas to help. So thanks again, everybody, and our faithful support team too. Yes, so yes. Right, so take good care, everybody. And I don't know if Marcel has any parting words or pause the recording.
All I would say is that thank you for coming on with us this academic year. It was my pleasure to be the host. It was my pleasure to be you guys, the host for this club organization. I really hope that you took some deep lessons and arguments and supporting details to defend the Christian faith and win souls for Jesus Christ. And that was a great mission that was sent to us by him before he left the earth. This is why we do what we do. We also hope that, as Dr. Buckland said, you encourage others to come to these meetings, spread the word. You don't know whose life this might change. There might be a struggling Christian out there who have these questions and don't have anybody to really answer these questions, that this could actually benefit a lot, to help strengthen their faith. So with that being said, thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the future in other events.
Bye, everyone.
Take good care, everyone. Bye.
Bye, bye.